welcome to episode 266 of the Crate and Crowbar on the 12th of December. I'm Tom Francis, and joining me tonight are...
Alex Wilshire.
And...
John Roberts.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Last week we recorded, I think, the day before the Game Awards happened, and the Game Awards had a lot of announcements piggybacked onto it. A lot to do with the Epic Store, actually, which we did talk about last week.
So that was covered. We were good there.
Yeah, the Epic Store itself. I think the Epic Store also hadn't launched, and so we didn't. Did we know what was on it? But anyway, it's launched with a bunch of exclusive stuff, including the next game from Supergiant, which is called Hades, and that is just straight into early access on the Epic Store. So it was just announced and released the same day. And Ashen, which is a game that has been sort of floating around for quite a while. Yeah. And became an Epic Store exclusive and is launched. I think it's just launched, right? It's not early access or anything.
Correct, yeah. It's out.
That is a game that looks really gorgeous. Has a lovely, stylized look. I get the impression it's kind of a Souls-like.
It's extremely Souls-like.
Okay. Yeah. Probably won't play it.
It looks like it shares some lineage with that other cool low poly style beat 'em up game where you can build your own combos that I've forgotten the name of.
Oh yeah, it was the sort of MMO one
where you wear masks.
Yeah, exactly what I mean. Absolver.
Yes, Absolver. It looks like it's quite similar to that. Really nice art style. They have that nice low poly aesthetic thing going on. I know because I've been trying to rip them off quite a lot. The game, if it's a bit more like PvE, I might be more interested in that than Absolver, which was, I think, hardcore PvP.
Yeah,
I found that quite hard, and I didn't get the combat at all, and it was also sort of log in, log outy, and sort of I got killed by some real people, and I thought, no, I
might have been killed by Chris over and over again.
It probably was Chris.
Hades we'll get back to because that's what I've been playing. And then there was a bunch of non-Epic Store stuff. Actually, no, sorry. On the Epic Storefront, there's also Satisfactory, which is already announced, but now that one is completely exclusive to Epic Store, as far as we know. They've said they've no plans for releasing on other platforms.
I wonder if these early adopters are people who were on Unreal Engine anyway, and are taking advantage of the...
I think Satisfactory might be, and I think Ashen was... I don't know about the others. But yeah, Satisfactory is, as far as we know, completely exclusive to Epic Store. What is it? Rebel Galaxy something? Yes. I can't remember what the subtitle is. That one is exclusive to the Epic Store for a year. And Hades is exclusive to the Epic Store while it's in early access. And then when it fully releases, it's going to be on other platforms. So presumably Steam. Which I think is quite a smart way to do it, because that... hedges their bets a bit. It's still quite a big get for Epic because I keep going to call them Bastion. Supergiant, who made Bastion and Transistor and Pyre, are a big deal, and a new game from them is, immediately interesting. That's why I downloaded the Epic Store launcher and bought something on it, so they got me. But it doesn't really cost Supergiant nearly as much as it's costing these other developers because they're not crippling their Steam launch, I don't think. Like I've previously said, one of the downsides of doing early access is you dilute your launch by having these two launches that are sort of the notability of it is split two ways, and so neither one of them necessarily registers on the same scale it would have if it was all one launch. Whereas here they get a big load of it, all the press and attention of this kind of news. The Epic Store is inherently news, and it's kind of controversial, and it's got a lot of attention, and they're one of the headliners there, so they get all that. And then when they come out on Steam, it's still going to be a big deal because it's their 1.0 launch, and for Steam customers, it's never been there before. So It's actually a bigger deal on Steam than it would have been if they'd done early access on Steam.
Yeah.
So I think they've got kind of a win-win there.
Yeah, it's a nice one. All this stuff has kind of resulted in a new class of apologetic blog post, which is... we can see that we're getting a lot of criticism for putting our game on the Epic Store and not another store, despite the fact they're both for your PC. And this is why we did it. Which, personally, I feel it's a bit of a shame they've had to do that. I have seen a few arguments as to why people are aggrieved that that the game, a game they've been looking forward to isn't coming out on Steam and is coming out on a different store as well instead. I don't really follow any of those arguments though too well.
Yeah, I think it's it has the stink of exclusivity, and the fact that it doesn't have the same problems as like when something is PlayStation exclusive and is not going to come to PC at all. That sucks if you don't own a PlayStation, and the only way to get around it is spend a whole bunch of money to get a PlayStation, and so you're either just left out or you have to spend some money, and so that's a real harm to you. Or it doesn't have a harm to you at all. That's a lie. You're not being injured anyway. You just don't get this one particular toy. Whereas this kind of exclusivity doesn't cost you anything to get it. You have to pay for the game. You don't have to pay any more for the game, and the service that you run it on is free. It's just a little bit of an inconvenience to download it and to create an account. And the thing of like, oh, I got another thing running my system tray, I'm kind of sympathetic to. But in practice, I just don't like the Epic launcher. I don't leave it running a system tray. When I want to play Hades, I fire up the Epic launcher and actually, you don't even need to do that once you've installed stuff. I don't know if this is universal in the Epic Store, but for Hades and probably for other indie games, there's no DRM on it, so there's no need to be running the Epic launcher to play it. It's just it's installed to your program files directory, and you just run it like a normal program.
I don't remember the last time I was actually angry about, say, Uplay, which kind of has to run. So when you open up in Steam, Uplay then opens as well, and it always has to update every time I do that.
Yeah,
and like, I don't know.
I remember
that is a level of faff that is manageable for me.
Yeah, Far Cry 3. I remember it being an issue with that. Like it was a pain in the ass to Uplay was getting in the way, and it's interesting because we've kind of got the whole range of approaches to this, because Ubisoft have their own launcher and have their own store, but they still sell their games on Steam, and they make that pretty painless for you on Steam. You just kind of launch the game. I guess, presumably if you don't have a Uplay account yet, do you have to create one, or do they automatically?
Pretty sure you do, yes.
Okay, so that's a pain the first time, but then every other time it's fine. EA, of course, have their own store and have just pulled their games from Steam. Sorry, not just pulled their games from Steam. They have completely pulled their games from Steam. I looked this up because I was curious. I hadn't really noticed this, except I guess when like Mass Effect Andromeda came out and I had to get it on Origin.
Yeah, Mass Effect 3 was the turning point for me. I was holding out until then, but I wanted
the
conclusion.
So I searched for Electronic Arts on Steam, and I found them as a publisher, and their last release was 2013, so 5 years ago, and it was like a Sims expansion pack. So I don't think I've bought an EA game since then, except for Andromeda, and it was Dragon Age Inquisition since then, I think it was.
Yeah, I think so.
Titanfall 2?
Oh yeah, I did play that. Huh. I must have bought that through Origin then. Maybe it's not that I don't buy EA games. It's just that I forget I bought them because I don't see them in the Steam library.
There is one argument that kind of so there was David Kalida. No, oh goodness, he's the developer of Cook Serve Delicious. Galindo, David Galindo. He wrote a post on Game Sutra which explained why he felt that it was anti-consumer to have the Epic Store and to pull your game off of Steam in order to put it on there, with the argument that because the Epic Store has far fewer features than Steam, so its returns policy is less detailed. Although you can totally return a game on the Epic Store, you don't get achievements, you don't get leaderboards and various other sort of bits and pieces that are all provided for any game that's on Steam. And I just think, but that doesn't mean it's not going to happen in the future. Like, sort of, of course, these things come out in a simple state.
Yeah.
You know that all this stuff is going to get built on it. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's that. So there's an argument that like exclusives they sort of create problems for the consumer in order to benefit the developer, but the long-term goal, part of the reason these developers don't feel guilty about doing this is that it's not purely self-interest. They hope it'll make the industry better and make it either pressure Valve into offering a better deal, or if they don't offer a better deal, maybe more people, Epic Store becomes a success, more people move to it, and players are more accepting of it and don't mind having it in their system tray or whatever. And the argument against that is like, oh, well, if you want people to come to your new store, you just got to make it better than Steam. But I think that's kind of not practical because Steam is a thing that they've been working on since, 2000 or something, like more than 15 years, I think. And it's Valve who are pretty good at least, depending on your perspective, at various times have been good at at reacting to player feedback. Like that's the thing that they, at least previously, have been known for. Lately, there's been a lot more pushback on their decisions, but they do try to listen to people and give the features that they want, and they have this huge backlog and wealth of data on how people use Steam and what languages are important and what currencies are important, and they've rolled those out over years and years and years. And I just don't. If your position is that if you can't launch a store that's already better than Steam from day one, you shouldn't launch a store, then there will never be another store, and that's not great. It's better if there is some competition from Valve. I'm someone who's not, pissed off at Valve, and not. For me, they do earn their 30%. But, won't say no to everything getting better for me. There are also some non-Epic related announcements. There's a new Far Cry game, New Dawn.
New Dawn.
Do you guys see this?
Yeah, it's post-apocalyptic.
Yep.
It's post-apocalyptic. Sorry.
Fancy selling a game after an apocalypse. Imagine that.
So
what could it? What would that world be
why
like?
You're being like this. We should not be discouraging post-apocalyptic settings. It seems to maybe directly follow on from the one, because
so mild spoilers for, well, I suppose quite big spoilers for Far Cry 5.
Very massive.
The statute of limitations is probably up. Oh well, I hadn't seen the end of Far Cry 5, and I was not annoyed.
I think that the makers releasing a game which spoils their game.
Yeah,
it's now fair
they've
game.
declared it's fair game. So at the end of Far Cry 5, a nuke goes off. I haven't played that far myself because I wasn't interested in the story stuff. Actually, I found it really annoying. But I watched on YouTube some of the ending. Fucking hell, it's long. There's several different ones. I think there's maybe only two main endings, but there's also like secret ones. Like at the start, you can refuse to arrest the cult leader, and that has a unique reaction, which is great. I really like when they do stuff like that. But fuck, I couldn't sit through the monologues, and because it was like a good ending and a bad ending one after the other, and some secret endings, I couldn't find where they started or stopped because I wasn't willing to watch them all. Because even as a video, even when I can skip the boring bits, I still can't get through all the fucking monologuing, and it's just like religious quotes and stuff, and like none of it feels like. It just needs an editor. If I don't know. What's weird is I was going to say if it was costing them X per minute to do this, but it is costing them X per minute. It's hugely expensive to make these scenes. The shorter, the better. But for some reason, I don't know. The style they're going for is long monologues with very little substance, and they have a really particular style of digital acting that they like, and it's in your face, literally. That they have a characterful villain who's very well modelled and very well acted. Usually the digital acting and the voiceover acting is very proficient, and they have that character literally get in your face and make very direct eye contact with you, and you're almost always restrained or unable to react while they do horrible things to you or say horrible things to you or taunt you and tease you, and they're so desperate to get a reaction out of you. And it doesn't really work for me. But actually, the villains since have all made me realise how good Vass was in Far Cry 3.
Yeah.
Not all of the dialogue for him was great, but that performance is so good. And he's also, I think, that actor, I'm forgetting his name on the spot, but he's in Orphan Black, and I keep seeing him in other stuff, and every time I was like, oh, it's Vass! Yay! He's really good in everything, and it really shows in that performance. He's one of the only villains they've had who's kind of has enough charisma to sell it. I think if you're going to do the kind of we're not so different, you and I, and the taunting, theatrical, moustache twirling villain type stuff, you can only really get away with it if the actor is charismatic enough to where you just kind of want to watch him. they're just compelling on screen, and so that's a credit to the actor, and also it's a credit to the digital acting, because you hadn't really had it to that extent for Far Cry 3, I don't think. And since then, the technical side of it has been just as good, I think, but the performances have never quite. I can't remember most of them now.
I thought that the main messianic character in Far Cry 5, like, it's an relatively understated performance. I think it's actually technically good. Like, I felt that he had a lot of gravity, but the problem is that tone does not fit the fact that you just had an insane kind of adventure before you just sort of shipped up at him, and he's sort of being all intense at you, and you're going, I don't care what you're talking about. I want to go in my wingsuit and befriend my dog.
So a nuke goes off, and Far Cry New Dawn is a game that is set. It's not immediately after the nuke goes off. It's after the world has had a chance to recover a bit. It's long enough that the dog is dead, but not long enough that all of the humans are dead. So there are some returning characters, apparently. But it's a kind of... to me, it looks very inspired by Annihilation, the Netflix adaptation of that book. Where
the colourful apocalypse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Blooming with flowers. I think they call it a super bloom or a hyper bloom, which is a phenomenon that apparently you sometimes get after Fallout and after the game Fallout. It does look pretty and nice, and looks like I'm not bored of it. Whereas Fallout 4, I think it was like, oh, it's still just ruined buildings, and
it's going to be another thing we talk about, but Obsidian's new RPG thing, which was almost revealed as a direct comparison to Fallout 76's Brown World, is also very colourful as well.
That is the Outer Worlds.
Not Outer Wilds.
Yeah, not to be confused with Outer Wilds, which is a different game that's also looks very cool. But yeah, Far Cry New Dawn, there's a granny sniper in it. I'm in favour of that.
This is a granny who is a sniper, not a sniper who specialises in grannies.
Look, I only do one thing, but I do it very well. A slow-moving target, you don't have to lead them very much. And they're going to die soon anyway, so the moral cost is not as bad. I do reduced rate.
It's going to be fun to see if they want to risk revisiting old locations, but apocalypsified.
Yes.
Which is a fun concept, and something that the team probably want to do, but also weighing that up against the kind of internet nerds who will get annoyed that they're reusing the map.
Yeah, so that was the thing they hit with Far Cry Primal, that they are reusing the map in this, and they've been quite upfront about it, and I think...
But it's not all of the map. It's actually, this is a slightly cheaper game. It's not as big, apparently, as Fallout.
Right.
Fallout. Far Cry 5 was.
Fallout just won't get out of this conversation, will it? Shut up, Fallout. They do have some off-site locations, though. You fly out to other locations in the US and have little missions there. But yeah, Far Cry Primal, this is very much a equivalent to Far Cry Primal, I think, in terms of scope and...
Yeah, but they never told us about the fact that they stole their own map.
And I think they didn't because there's no justification for it. There's no reason why it would be the same chunk of land. And they assume people wouldn't notice, and I don't think anyone would have if they hadn't done a direct map, layover thing. I certainly had no idea, and I played that. I played Far Cry 4 extensively, and I played Far Cry Primal extensively. So I have absolutely no problem with that. This time, there's an intriguing thing that I think I might like, where outposts, after you capture them, you can either kind of secure them for good, and they'll be yours forever. Or those forces that you were using to defend it, you can send them out to scavenge, and you get some resources, but you leave your outpost undefended. And the way I heard it is that means it gets taken over by enemies, and then you have to take it again. I don't quite know how... It seems like that can't work ad infinitum. It can't be you just always lose it, and then you just take it back and you get the resources again. I mean, maybe you can, maybe... but are they going to stop me from just, doing the easiest outpost 100 times and getting resources from that? Or maybe you can only do it once or something? I don't know. But I like that idea because I love outposts. I only want to play the outposts, and when they're all done, I would enjoy playing them again, but it feels a little bit weird to kind of go into the options menu and click a sort of abstract button that says, I want that fun again, please. Even though it doesn't make any sense, put all the enemies back.
It's got crafting in it.
Yep.
As a game designer, Tom, is it possible to make a game set in the with a post-apocalyptic setting that doesn't have a crafting and scavenging system in it? Is it possible? I don't think it is. Demonstrably.
What about Elegy for a Dead World? The game where you just walk through desolate landscapes and write poetry about them. I don't think.
I suppose that is the other response to the post-apocalypse. Poetry or crafting. Nothing else.
The two things we can rely on after the apocalypse.
Yeah.
It's not surprising to me that they all do, because it's part of... It supports the aesthetic.
It is, yeah. But it's like, oh, here we go.
It's funny whenever they promote a Far Cry game, except for Primal, because all the stuff they show is the stuff I don't want to do, and has no... Like, they haven't shown any like bow and arrow stuff or stealthy stuff. It's just someone running into a fucking camp with a machine gun and blasting everybody, and it's totally unappealing to me, but I guess there's an audience for that.
I just suddenly realised that all those colours, it's a bit like the Rage 2. It's got the Rage 2 feel, hasn't it? The kind of bright colours.
It's not wacky, because wacky is a terrible word. But yeah, that exuberant and excited feel that Rage 2 definitely has.
Yeah.
There was mohawks and cars with blue tyres and razor blade launchers, and it looked pretty fun.
Rage 2 has a release date now, which is May 14th.
I keep sort of feeling vaguely surprised it hasn't come out already.
Yeah.
Because it's just sort of...
I didn't...
half forgotten about.
Yeah, I never really got into the first one. So this is not very exciting news for me.
What else was announced?
Last Campfire.
Oh, yeah.
From Hello Games.
New Hello Games game.
Which is... am I right in thinking it's by just two people at Hello Games?
Yeah, it's by Steve Burgess, who you probably know, don't you, Tom?
No, there's lots of famous people who worked at Frontier when I was there, and didn't meet any of them.
He's lovely. You'd like him.
Yeah. I think... Oh, interestingly, this is like a smaller project within Hello Games.
That's right.
I think it's just the two of them.
Yeah, they were based in a small studio in Ely.
Yeah,
in Norfolk.
I think that mirrors their time at Frontier, where it was just them or some of them and another small team within who worked on Lost Winds.
That's right.
Which was a Wii thing that I think, proportional to the team investment, was one of Frontier's most profitable games ever, because it was just a tiny, beautifully made little thing. So I'm excited for a kind of adventure game. I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, it looked lovely from the trailer. Actually, I was really, really taken with it.
But beautiful art and a fun story that seems to be told without speech, maybe. Lots of very emotive characters and fun backdrops. It looked really cool.
Yeah, there's a Nintendo-y feel to the backdrops.
Good sense of humour as well.
But with a kind of mysterious adventuring that's a bit like... Do you know the segue here? Below.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. Which has finally got a renounced release date, announce date.
It's got a
Look out, everybody.
Date.
It's got a
On this date,
renouncement.
we're going to renounce the game and decide.
And it's coming out in January, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right. And so has At the Gates, which is the 4X strategy game about being barbarians outside the gates of Rome, by John Schaefer, who is the lead designer of Civ 5. And that has been 7 years in development, with 2 years off because he had a very rough time making it. And he joined Paradox at one point, and then
because he's in Sweden now, isn't he?
Yeah. And yeah, that's finally coming out in January. And it still looks lovely. It's got this lovely watercolour style where the fog of war is just unpainted canvas, and as you explore it, it gets painted. And it's a game where you only have one base. You're kind of... once you use up all the resources in your area, you have to pick up camp and move it somewhere else, which is cool. And yeah, it's very much a game that sets out to solve some of the problems of Civ. There was also, as you mentioned, John, The Outer Worlds.
Yes.
Which is an Obsidian game, a first-person RPG in the vein. It struck me as kind of being Borderlands-ish, Fallout-ish.
Yeah, I think its aesthetic is very Borderlands. But I think this is... Everyone's been asking for New Vegas 2 from Obsidian. And I think both them and Bethesda have been pretty clear that that's not going to happen. So this is probably what they've been working on instead.
Yeah.
And developing their own IP on this frontier world.
So apparently it's not going to be owned by or published by Microsoft, despite Microsoft buying Obsidian.
They slide in just before the deadline.
I think they must have done.
That's fun. But yeah, that's what we've seen in that trailer so far. The writing is good and funny. They had some good digital acting, some nice kind of Joss Whedon like visual comedy bits with clunky machinery. It does skirt very close to Borderlands with its kind of high-tech Western frontier town theme. But I think they called attention to that as well by saying like corporations bought the frontier and repackaged it and sold it to us again. So that might be basically like a frontier theme park that you break out of at some point. I'm just making up a game now. It's fine. But yeah, it was interesting to see them.
It's set on multiple planets, it seems like.
Oh, right.
It's like a little kind of solar system, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And they look pretty. That's my take on that.
Ooh. Talking of big games that have been in production for a very long time and are based in a solar system of planets that are very pretty. Beyond Good and Evil.
Yeah.
I started watching a video of that, but I didn't get all the way through it.
No, it was very, 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 very long.
It continues to just look suspiciously ambitious. I'm so immunized to the the magic that they want to inspire with these kinds of like, look at this fucking planet and it's a whole planet, you can go to other planets and there's everything is just everything all the time.
Yeah.
I've heard that pitch a lot, and it hasn't materialized, but also the more people try it, the less I think I even want it to materialize. Less I think I even want like a whole planet of stuff. It's sort of, the promise seems almost fundamentally impossible, and so it's always a case of like, which bit are you being slightly misleading about? Like, I wish they would just say like, look at this planet, 99% of it is dead. There's nothing in 99% of it. The 1% we put a lot of work into, and we'll tell you where that 1% is, and you just go there and you have some fun and you go on. Because the scale is cool. I love looking at a big planet. But when you're trying to tell me it's all full of stuff to do, I just don't believe you for a second. And I hope it's not, because if it is, then it must be generated, and it's probably not going to be as good as if you'd, made.
It looked from the video. There's lots of very authored, very kind of made environments that sort of have specific sort of objectives and kind of crafted levelly stuff in them. Yeah,
and my hope is it is just a sort of, a handful of points of interest scattered around a landscape that looks very pretty, and you fly over it and there's nothing. I saw like them flying over some cityscape, and they flew close enough that you could see it was just a kind of repeating pattern of stuff. Like it didn't seem like it was promising you could land at any point and go inside all the buildings and have unique adventures and stuff, which is good because, I don't think they could do that.
But I think the setting, like, you're meant to be pirates, basically, so, you can construct a game out of generated stuff with that because you're, boarding ships and whatnot.
Yeah, it seems quite heavy on dogfighting. They said any vehicle you can see, you can fly and or drive or pilot. You can customize your vehicle and replace all parts of it, and it seems really fucking ambitious. It's all drop in, drop out, seamless multiplayer with all your friends.
I think that you can't I had spent the last couple of months working on a book about Roblox, and in this book there are interviews with the makers of various Roblox games, who are mostly kids. Sort of, I talked about Roblox a few weeks ago, and one of the stock questions that I got these interviews given to me that had been conducted by the makers of Roblox, and one of the stock questions they asked each of them was, if you could make any game you wanted when time, skill, and money wasn't an object, what would you make? And I'm not kidding. 3/4 of them were a space game where you can go anywhere, you can land on any planet, you can do what you like, you can build a base, you can, you can fly around, do dogfighting, explore the planet. sort of, you've kind of got to do those games because literally, if you're a big company, you've got to make that because that's what people genuinely want.
I wonder if there's an element, though, that when you're asked that question phrased that way, you're prompted to think of the most ambitious thing rather than the thing you want most. Like, I can't imagine anyone ever saying Slay the Spire 2. Like, even though that might be the game that they want the most.
Intricate card game, please.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right that it's a eternally attractive concept to a large number of people, and yeah, Star Citizen is
Star
good proof
Citizen,
of how much you can get out of just the promise of it.
Elite is trying to achieve that. Beyond Good and Evil, and the who's the guy who made the arena shooter popular again? DayZ.
Oh yeah,
him. What's his name?
Rocket.
Dean Hall.
Rocket something Hall.
Yeah.
What's his name?
He was having a go.
Rocket to Guns. Is that his username?
That's his Twitter name.
He was having a go at a big endless space game where you construct things, and so I mean, even relatively experienced developers, when they get lots of money, want to do that as well. So yeah,
it's a thing. Was there any other news announcements-y things?
I was just going to mention that sort of as another huge great game that kind of that people love to sort of the idea of playing and the idea of making Kenshi, which is a single player RPG where you can go off and do anything you like really within this kind of very brown world. You can sort of be a trader or all the things, all the things, fighting. You can make bases. You can sort of collect a large group of people that you're kind of controlling, almost RTS like. Has finally come out after 6 years in development. It's being made in Bristol down the road, and I'm due to talk to them in a couple of weeks, or a couple of days. There's another shout out to that game, which is another long in development game. Yeah, finally seeing the light.
Long term thing is Maya by Simon Roth. Released either last week or the week before, after a pretty long development. Yeah, that's been sitting in my Steam in early access for a long time, and I'm quite interested to go back to it now that it's hit that milestone and see what kind of thing it actually is. Yeah. I think he once told me he measures the density, mass, and water content of every rock in that game. So I'm not sure exactly what I'll get out.
Any reason?
Simulation.
Okay.
But there's also chickens that you can accidentally set on fire. So I think
if that's what comes with that, that's good. The water content of chickens isn't high enough for them not to be set on fire. What have you been playing, John?
I have been going through Steam sales, the Thanksgiving, the holiday sale. I picked out a few things, and one of those was ReCore, which I think was an Xbox One launch title.
ReCore.
Yeah. That's been languishing in Microsoft Store hell for a long time, and they remastered it and put it out on Steam. And it's a kind of action adventure shooty robots game where you have, I think the main draw of it is like a desert world, and you're this kind of survivor mechanic person, and you have a cool robot dog with like a glowing blue core in it, which is where the thing comes from.
Is that the dog core?
Yeah, because you can
is there more than one
you
dog?
can take their core and you can
put it in a different dog.
In something else.
Always a dog?
No, it could be spider, gorilla.
The three main kinds of coreable thing.
What happens to the dog after the core's been removed from the dog?
It goes to sleep.
Okay. So you're effectively killing the dog?
Does it dream? In the sleep state.
Does a ReCore dog dream electric dreams? ReCore dreams.
In this game, you are a kind of caretaker mechanic person who is overseeing the terraforming of a frontier world. Or rather, you're in deep sleep while various AIs and robots and cores go off and do all the hard work. There's a colony ship in orbit above with lots more humans. And the setup is something's gone wrong and all the robots have gone bad. And it's up to you to find out what's going wrong.
With a gun?
With a gun.
Excellent.
A gun and a robot dog friend and lots of shooting and platforming.
Is it good?
7 out of 10.
Wow.
It's pretty good. I think the most interesting thing about it is that you very quickly realise it was designed by a committee. It feels utterly of its time and does not take any brave decisions at all. I think when the first trailer for it came out, they had a big name on it. It's the Mega Man guy. Is it Keiji Inafune or something like that?
Yeah, okay.
They were trying to think from the creative mind of Inafune. It's like, well, I think he just kind of knocked this one off to a few interns.
From a doodle on the back of it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking dogs. Corned dogs.
There's like
Roll with it.
there's the kind of wishful open world where it's like we want an open world, but we're going to do like 3 or 4 big zones instead, and they're going to have lots of interesting things in them. Some of which you will unlock later in the game and have to come back to once you have new robots that have different abilities and stuff like that. Everything is, all the enemies are leveled, so you have to level up your gun and stuff like this. You can double jump and dash and stuff like that. And there's one thing which I'm absolutely sure was passed down by a cigar munching Microsoft mid-level producer, where it's got a wacky robot in. And it's like, someone said, my kid loves this claptrap thing from Borderlands. Stick it in this. And then, 2 weeks later, he was off the project doing something else. But the team was still cursed with this annoying, stupid robot.
Wacky robot. Is it sort of like a floating one that's sort of always with you? What?
It's
There
got
are
legs.
various
Which of the 3
expressions of
kinds of
the
robot?
irritating robot.
It's like a tiny humanoid munchkin thing with like a rebel bandana on it because it's leading the resistance against the enemy robots. But it doesn't use words. It talks in stupid Simlish stuff.
Do you get like subtitles for what it's saying?
No.
Okay, so you have no idea what it's
No,
saying.
it's like the R2-D2 thing where it
Okay.
jabbers on and then your protagonist interprets it.
Right.
But the dumb thing is you get audio logs of this stupid wibbling robot.
Well, someone's
do you
typed
understand
out
them?
lots of phonetic sort of... Really?
Really?
Is it like that?
Yeah, for like a minute and a half
Nice.
when you collect this thing.
Imagine having that job.
Does the protagonist interpret this for you, or
I can't even, I just drown it out. If there's subtitles, I just like block it out for my own.
You put something at the bottom of the screen, like a row of books.
honestly, I've done that when watching stuff that like if for whatever reason I can't turn off subtitles, like they're baked in, or the menus are a pain in the ass. I find them extremely distracting if they come up before the word is said.
Yeah.
And so I've done it where like if I often have my laptop out when I'm watching TV, and I'll just like shift the laptop and my head level so that the laptop is blocking the subtitle level so that I can't read them, which is dumb.
There's some nice animation going on in ReCore. Like you have your dog companion, and whoever did the dog was very good at animating a fun robot dog companion. The platforming is pretty solid. You have a double jump and a dash, and various puzzles involve getting through gates which reset those things, and they're landing on moving platforms and so on. But the actual like mechanics of controlling all that and telegraphing where your character is in 3D space relative to platforms and stuff, and camera angles never fuck up. It's actually relatively good, which is nice. Otherwise, it would get incredibly frustrating very quickly. The graphics annoy me slightly for something I can't quite put my finger on, and it feels like they've dialed the sharpness of everything up to 11 just to show off like 4K gaming on Xbox One.
Right.
Everything is very noisy, norm mapped, and like PBR lighting and stuff. So everything's like shiny and crisp and noisy, and it just doesn't pull
Everything's
together.
going, look at me, look at me.
Exactly.
What does PBR stand for?
Physically based rendering.
That's weird. PBR for physically. Obviously that's the right spelling, but like I just
letter
could never
starts
make
with.
the mental.
Would you rather it was
leap.
F?
Yeah.
That might be very artist specific, but it's fascinating, Alex. It's about measuring the surface structure of the material you're trying to emulate, rather than just kind of guessing and going around the long way. It's like, no, it has the surface grain of this, and it has the reflection properties of this, and then
I'm into it.
You look fascinated.
I know. I am. I genuinely am. I'm well into it.
I can't remember if I've like wondered this aloud on the podcast before, but I'm really curious as to like if there are how much kind of science is pioneered through graphics technology, like for video games specifically. Like, because I remember hearing the term subsurface scattering, which is to do with how light reflects off skin, and it's to do with like some of the light gets in like the first layer and then scatters around beneath it, right? And there's
bounces
this
off
diffuse
blood
effect.
and muscle and bone.
And I want to know, did we know that before we made video games? Is that something like, did they ask physicists, hey, how does light work? Or did they have to do original research? And
to be fair, it's still 3D graphics is pioneering a lot of stuff, but games come to it late.
Right.
And mostly because we have to look at the very, very expensive ways that stuff like 3ds Max and Maya can simulate subsurface scattering and try and fake them through very cheap methods instead. But with graphics processors getting more powerful, we can get more and more real with those effects and kind of catch up to like the Pixar level of crazy physics rendering.
Hence being able to play the entire of Battlefield 5 through the reflections of a teammate's eyeballs.
Yeah.
If you've paid £5 billion for your new graphics card. That's the future.
It's fun that there's, I can't remember what game it is, but some relatively new game is boasting ray tracing, like true ray tracing.
Yeah.
Because I remember that word from the 80s.
I remember it from when
about to
my
happen.
486 66 megahertz would draw a line of ray traced of basically a sphere with a kind of green background that I'd done, or usually with green backgrounds, and
that's fun. I wonder what they mean by real ray tracing.
Yeah,
like 20 different things.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, are you tracing every photon? Because that's a lot of photons.
I think, with that stuff, it's just accurate reflections on specifically reflective things. But I've seen some screenshots of Battlefield 5 where the ray tracing is switched on, and the image is just way noisier because all the puddles suddenly have got beautifully reflective, kind of actually reflective things, and suddenly your eye is being torn down to the ground when you probably ought to be looking into the sort of the far to middle distance instead. And it's sort of even as an image, sort of it's emphasizing the wrong things. Like the reflection in the mud is probably not the important thing about the scene, and it's not the practically important thing about the scene.
What was the game? Was it Spider-Man where the people complained that puddles weren't as reflective in the final game? Maybe they were doing that for your own good. It's distracting from the image.
Anyway, ReCore.
ReCore.
There's lots to do.
ReCore. There's lots to do.
There's lots to do.
Top of the bullet points.
And you won't feel bad about playing it till you've had your fun with it and then forgetting it forever.
I feel like there's a special kind of character to Xbox exclusives. Like, obviously there's Gears of War, which is like a typical AAA game, and
the Uber.
I feel like every generation they have one thing that's kind of well-meaning and a little bit quirky and interesting, but doesn't really catch on, and you forget completely about it. Because now that you mention it, I do remember ReCore from like when the Xbox One came out.
Yeah,
and
it had a very nice E3 trailer that is not representative of the game at all. So.
And then it just slips from the public consciousness. Again, never really heard anyone talk about it, and it's not that people said it was bad; it just didn't say anything at all. Yeah.
Here's to you, ReCore.
And your wacky robot sidekick. What have you been playing, Alex?
So Tom, we have been playing a game together. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I was going to quickly talk about a new first-person shooter, a Quake-like first-person shooter called Dusk, which came out, I think, today. In fact, maybe or yesterday. I can't remember. Anyway, this is a sort of in amongst those Quake kind of re-envisagings that kind of have been quite popular over the past year or so, year or two. Which use really simple 3D models, revel in unfiltered kind of textures, lots of pixels available, lots of very jarring kind of sort of 3D forms.
How aliased would you say it is?
Super aliased. You can choose your aliasing. There is in the menus. I've got it on a little bit, or itty bitty pixelated, which is 2 times.
2002.
Yeah, you put it into the years. Yeah.
Can you go like beyond turning off anti-aliasing and having pro-aliasing?
Yeah, it's just adding extra. Yeah. No, it's and it plays incredibly fast, and when you change weapons, shotgun is on 3. Pistol is on 2.
Nice.
Melee's on 1.
What's the melee weapon?
Well, this is different. Twin scythes.
Wow.
Kind of like, it's as if you've got handhelds, and not the long scythes, but sort of like the sort of hand scythes.
Like a sickle?
They are. Sickles. Yeah, that's it, yeah. 2 of them, and you kind of go swoosh them in front of the camera very quickly. The first level, see, I don't know whether... I just ran because I realised that the sides aren't powerful enough to defeat the first enemies you come across, which are these chainsaw wielding kind of sort of meaty angular guys.
Sickle versus chainsaw is not a fight. You don't bring a sickle to a chainsaw fight, as the saying goes. Not even 2 sickles.
I could not bring one down at all. So I just ran and kind of, it was very short level, and that was that.
It's like a hilarious scene from a movie that sets itself up to be this macho.
Yeah, it's like,
oh shit, they got chainsaws.
you don't have the tools to defeat anybody in this game at all. You will just run. Which I actually enjoyed that, and I suspect that you probably can kill them, but if you find, it's full of secrets. It has color-coded doors. It's proper sort of Doom, Quake era play. The level design is really nice, as in the looping sort of sense of it, where you go into an area, you'll see a door that you can't go into, you go deeper into the level, you get that key, you're sort of starting to think, oh, I've got to backtrack now, but then the floor opens up and suddenly you fall down a pit, and then you're back, you make your way through that, and you're back up by the door that you need to go through. It's that really nice looping, old style kind of careful, sort of incredibly contrived level design, but in all the best ways.
That's how they build them on the moon.
Yeah,
that feels like an art that for single player level design has been a little bit lost, because everything now has to look like a place. Once you hit a certain level of fidelity, it's inescapable that this thing has to look like some kind of real place.
Yeah.
And even if it's an alien spaceship, you have to follow some rules about how it's laid out. Whereas back in the days of Quake and Doom, it was just
fuck it,
let's make the flow really good. It's some kind of Mars base. It's some kind of medieval place, but it might also be a sci-fi place in the case of Quake.
This one is a farm. I'm pretty sure I found some sort of underground kind of thing, which is a brewery. In this one, you can find bottles.
Would an underground brewery be a sewery?
Yeah, there was quite a lot of green puddles around as well. And bottles where, when you pick them up, when you kind of highlight or look directly at them, you can press E on them and it says quaff. So it gives you a little bit of health. And after a while I became obviously intoxicated and the view went very wobbly. It has all of the sort of the building blocks of the classic shooters, but in place of armor, it has morale, and instead of morale, the pickups are gold and diamonds.
Just was so excited about my quest.
So your damage mitigation is just like your bravery, which is based on how rich you are.
It's quite realistic.
This is all good. I'm down with that.
Does it actually work exactly like armor? Like just
Pretty sure it does.
Health?
I mean, I blasted through probably about 6 levels, and I'd say that was how things seem to be working. You dual wield your shotguns, and like it's you've played it before, but this is a good example of it. The imagery is kind of weird, I have to say. Like the sheer there's the kind of art is very inconsistent, I would say. Like sort of where you look at Doom and Quake, they are sort of obsessively consistent, I would say. But Quake even more so. Like every bit of it works together whereas this one, a lot of the textures and things kind of really jarring with each other, in a way that kind of, I don't know, it's appealing, but like if you're really going to evoke those classic games, you've got to think about the consistency as well, and little other things where the font used for pickups and things is in a different resolution to the way that it's presented on the screen. So it's kind of like,
it's going to make John angry.
And that is a bugbear of mine as well.
You don't fuck with the texel rate.
You don't fuck with the texel rate. You don't.
Is it 3D like Strafe, or is it more sprite based?
It's 3D, so it's Quake era
sort
of tech.
Yeah.
Sort of
Is
thing.
there a ragdoll?
No, because I killed a scarecrow.
In fairness, the scarecrow wouldn't ragdoll that much anyway.
And it landed on top of the thing that it was sort of next to. So it was just lying like a board, like some sort of bit of level of architecture.
This is a weird aside that will go nowhere, but when I first played Duke Nukem 3D, I had a bizarre bug where all corpses blocked line of fire, like at an infinite height. Like if there was a corpse on the ground at that location, you could not shoot past it at any height. And I just because I wasn't used to like games just being different for different people. Like it could crash or not run at all. But I just thought this is just how the game is. It's just a weird decision the designers made that corpses like block everything forever. I guess in a way it was a forerunner for Darkest Dungeon.
Yeah, and the going back to the kind of inconsistency thing, the enemies again, it's appealing. It's cute the way that you're killing scarecrows, chainsaw wielding sort of lumpy men, hovering magic kind of wizards who throw fireballs. They're kind of, I guess, the equivalent of imps in Doom. Yeah.
It sounds
weird,
like a mod.
scuttly little sort of really.
Sounds like a weird mod you downloaded from somewhere.
That is it. It's like somebody's basically, you're playing someone else's game and they've kind of installed a random collection of mods. Yeah, that's exactly it. But fuck it, it's really good.
Yeah.
It's really fun and kind of I really recommend it. Although I've got a newish screen which is G-Sync that runs at 144 sort of hertz.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god, I felt sick.
Oh really?
Yeah, I couldn't. It's a 27-inch screen, so it's quite field filling.
Yeah.
Vision of field filling for me, and I felt quite ill because it's running so fast. And something they've got a really nice sense of physical movement in it as well, but that does mean that sort of.
So wait, did you feel sick because it was smooth or because it wasn't smooth?
I tend to find first-person shooters on that screen when they're super smooth, I will get sick, and especially when they're as fast as this game, and the way that when you strafe, the view sort of slightly sort of dips in one direction to give you a real sense of physical movement, which is great for the moment, but does bad things over time. So yeah, Dusk, it's fun. Is my review.
And yeah, we've been playing Twinfold, which is a new game from Kenny's son. I wish now that I'd looked up what the name of his first game was, because I remember I covered it for PC Gamer, and it was a really cool, visually striking game about like concentric circles. You were trying to. This is Kenny's first game, not Twinfold, which we're about to talk about. But his first one was concentric circles, and you're walking around the outside of the circle, and when an enemy came up, you had to kind of press a button to switch sides, so you're walking on the inside of the circle. And then, I can't remember how, but once you completed that ring, you moved to the inner ring, and each one had, like, I think inverted colours to the last one, and it kind of looked like a kind of I don't know, a pattern you'd get on a rug or something, but you were playing it and it was really cool.
Circa Infinity.
Yeah, that was it.
Which was followed up by Circle Infinity.
Oh, I didn't know.
I think
about
one.
the confusingly
I think one of them. I
named
think it might have initially come out on mobile and then it was brought to PC or something like that.
Right.
It was like
What
Anyway,
is this game?
Twinfold.
Because so
Twinfold.
far, all I've seen of it is people posting larger and larger numbers.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's
So should we say the quick version of the kind of like the dirty description,
Okay.
which is Michael Brogue. No, Michael Brogue meets or makes. I'm completely blown
Threes.
it. Threes.
Michael Bro makes threes by way of Michael Bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. I heard that description before I played it, and I did not get that impression from it. It definitely has the threes influence, but and it definitely copies some things from Michael Bro's games. But the Michael Bro style for me is like rough and kind of ugly and pure deep mechanics, and doesn't worry about kind of feel or a lot of polished elements that other games do, and like very homebrew sounds. And this is like, I guess, like threes, so fair enough. Beautifully presented, extremely clean and curved, and lovely sound design, very rich and kind of professional. Anyway, you are a tile on a grid, I guess. Like you're a rectangular, yeah. Like threes, everything is a tile with a face on it, including you. And there are 2 gold tiles, which at the start of the game, they're each valued at 1. And every time you move left, right, up or down, everything moves except for the walls of the level. So like the gold moves, you move, enemies move.
It's as if everything's on a kind of board underneath the level.
And you are trying to push those 2 gold tiles into each other. Which obviously, if they're in free space when you move, they don't push into each other because they all move at the same amount. But if you can push them up against a wall, one of them can't move, the other one moves into it, and the 2 ones become a 2, and another 2 spawns, and then at a random location, and all the walls regenerate, which is how Imbroglio works. Every time you get the star, the level regenerates around you. That happens in this. And so every time you merge them, you're doubling the score of those tiles, but you don't get any score until you eat them. And eating them is kind of a bad thing, because if if there's 2 4s on screen and you eat one of them, now you don't have another 4 to combine with the other one. So you can't get 8. You have to just eat the other 4, and once they're both gone, whether because you ate them or because an enemy ate them or it fell down a pit or whatever, once they're both gone, 2 2s spawn. So you've halved the value of what's on the board. So every time you do that, you're setting yourself back a lot. And if you can hold off on eating them for as long as possible, every time you manage to merge them without eating them, you've doubled your score that you'll get for eating them. And so, the first time you play it, you're kind of eating them a lot. When you eat them, you get a health point back as well. So if you've been injured by an enemy, then if you accidentally let an enemy eat one of them, like they get healed and you don't get the points from that one. And now you can't combine the remaining one with anything, so you might as well eat that. And the first time I played it, that's happening all the time. And you're merging, happens when you're lucky, and that's it. And then afterwards, you're like, oh, I see, the whole game's about merging. I just should be trying to merge and avoiding everything else. And then you do that, and you do it, and you do it, and you do it, and it like you get in situations where like the only way I can merge is by pushing myself into a wall, and that hurts me. And you're chipping away at your health, and you realise I'm never going to get any health back ever, or level up, or get any abilities, or progress in any way until I eat one of these things.
So yeah,
and it's
when
just
you
about
eat
trying to
them,
make that as late as possible.
when you eat them, the score that they give you is also sort of XP. So when it hits kind of sort of successive sort of thresholds.
It's like I think it's like 16 at first, and then like the next one's like 128 or something. Because like I say, you're doubling the score all the time, and the thresholds double as well. Once you know the game well and you know you're supposed to be merging these things, you're not really eating them until quite late in the game. Or at least, I think the last time I played, I probably didn't eat it until it was like 256 at least.
So I was going to ask you about that.
You skyrocket past like multiple level ups, and so you get, every time you level up, you get offered like 3 different possible upgrades. Some of them are just things like sort of like spells, where like this one, you could spend some points to create a wall wherever you like, or you can spend some points to cancel an enemy action or turn an enemy round, that kind of thing. Others are passive benefits, like you no longer fall into pits, or the gold no longer falls into pits, or every time an enemy bumps into a wall, they take 2 damage instead of 1. Actually, I think it might be 2 extra damage. But anyway, that when you're playing sort of naively and just eating the gold whenever it's convenient or whenever you bump into it or whatever, you're leveling up at a sort of normal rate. But if you play, intelligently and try and avoid it as long as possible, when you finally get that, like last time I played, I sort of leveled up 6 times at once the first time I leveled up. Yeah. And so every time you level up, you also get fully healed. So if you're on low health, you get the health for eating the thing, but also the points that you get then level you up and you get full health for that. And yeah, so when you actually get to like the crisis point where you're on 1 health and the 2 things that they're up to like, 2 million each. If you merge them, there will be 2 of them and both of them are worth 4 million.
Yeah, you got to go,
that's 2 million
I
more.
can't possibly eat them. But
if you die before eating either of them, like my score could be like, 512 at that point. There's 2 million on the board. If I don't eat them, like, it's a massive disaster.
It's a real sense of kind of like, on one hand, you feel that abstinence, like it's saying that abstinence is a very kind of like an extremely important virtue. And then on the other hand, it's like, you really do have to eat now. Stop being so greedy.
How does it mix up subsequent runs?
The layout of the walls is randomly generated. Other than that, and what upgrades are offered as random, and some of them are pretty game changing. Like gold not falling in pits is a huge deal because then all you have to worry about is enemies eating gold. I got one where you can have it so you don't fall in pits. The best one I got was that you're warned when enemies are going to spawn. Enemies always spawn when you merge. So even if you get like a good run where you can merge very easily, it's quite dangerous to merge very often, like every couple of turns, because you probably haven't dealt with their existing enemies. And dealing with enemies is because you can move them, you can bump them into walls, they take damage from that. It's actually like with 1 or 2 enemies, it's pretty easy to just kind of outplay them. Like you see where they're going to move. And there's this pattern I keep getting into where like a guy's going to move towards me and hurt me. So I move to the left where there's a wall between us, and he bumps himself into the wall because he can't change his mind about what he's going to do, and he takes damage from that. And because there's now a wall, he tries to move left, and the space he's trying to move to is empty, but 1 space away from that is a wall. So I move left, so now he's touching the wall and he bumps into that, and then he's like, "Rah!" And then you're below him, so he aims down again, and then you just move back to the same barrier. I could just do that all day.
It's quite, it's and it has nice feeling.
When that happens, you feel like the game gives you kind of an absurd level of control over enemies. It's just ridiculous. It kind of feels like the sort of slapstick scene where someone like holds the other person's head while they try and punch them, and just like completely, they're in the palm of your hand. You can screw them over in whatever way you like, and just everything they try will backfire and kill them. But of course, because it's so random, and because there are other types of enemies, some of which can go through walls, some of which can't be hurt by being pushed into walls and stuff like that. You very quickly get into situations where it's like, oh god, every move I do here, it's either I take some damage or I push an enemy into the gold, which means they eat the gold, they heal themselves, I don't get the points, I can't merge, or I go up this way and I fall into a pit and die and the whole run is over. And that's not really acceptable. And you're also most of the time trying to not eat the gold. Sometimes like I look at all my options and like this one I'll take 3 damage, and this one I'll fall into a pit and die, and this one the enemy eats the gold, and this one I just eat the gold and I get a shitload of points and I level up a bunch. I'm trying to avoid that, but if I have to do it, it's actually not a bad option.
The has a really cool undo system.
Yeah,
where you can undo. We were talking about this. They've definitely been in quite a situations where I've been able to undo twice, but it's sort of one I don't really quite understand.
My impression is you can always undo the last move, and if you do undo the last move, then make another move, you can also undo that.
Right.
But I've never been able to go 2 back into the past. If you know what I mean.
I can't remember the situation, but yeah, undo. It's always available, but for every undo you use, you lose a percentage of your score.
1% of your score. And, when your score is like 8, you kind of think it literally isn't anything. It won't affect my score at all. But if this run goes well, I'm going to end up with 60 million points. And 1% of that is actually not insignificant. And so you're always like... I really like the system because when I played initially, I used the undo loads, and it was super helpful because there's just loads of cases where you can use it after you've died and the scoreboard has come up and it's told you what you got in your run. You can still say, nope, undo. I want to go back and see, could I have got out of that? And I was in a situation where, like, my best ever run at the time, I was on the scoreboard for that, and I could literally, as in a situation where I could go left or right, and if I go, I think it was like right or down. And if I go down, I'm pretty sure I die, but it depends on this enemy's behavior. If I go left, I definitely die because there's this ghost enemy that can hit me through walls.
Oh, that one's a scumbag.
And so I went down, and my run ended, and I got the highest score I'd ever got, and it was great. It was on the leaderboards, and then I stopped playing the game, and I came back the next day and fired it up. And actually, a weird thing had happened where normally I would expect it to still be on that screen and still have the option to undo. It had actually already undone for me. I just fired up the game, and I was just in the situation I was in at the last minute before I played that. And because I was in that situation, I just thought, well, I'll just try going right instead. And it turns out the enemy that can move through walls can't attack through walls, and attempting to attack through walls hurts it.
Oh, shit,
so
really?
I moved right, and the thing tried to hit me through the wall. It killed itself. I'm like, oh my god, this is actually salvageable. I can play on from here. And
I assumed it would just go straight through walls.
Yeah, I assumed that too. But
this changes everything.
Yeah.
So when you're comparing scores, is that just like a high score thing, or is there a daily run or something?
No daily run at the moment.
Just playing the game anyway. And I have to
we
say,
we should say that we're playing on mobile, but it's available on Steam as well. So it might behave slightly different on Steam because presumably you wouldn't be able to come back to the client the next day if you switch off. I have played it a bit on Steam, but I don't remember how that works.
And yeah, the points is just everything you've ever eaten. So it's this weird thing where like everything you've ever eaten up until the point where the 2 million is on the board will be less than 2 million. It'll be like, maybe 1 million and a bunch of change. And then you eat that one extra thing and you've doubled your score. And yeah, the leaderboards has been a sort of comical farce because a friend of the podcast, Zach Johnson, posted an image that he just called video games, and it was his score, which was like 2,600, and his friend Kevin's score, which is like 260 trillion. And since then, Zach and I, not so much Kevin, Zach and I have been in hot competition to overtaking each other. Like he'll overtake me, then I'll overtake him, and so on. I think last time we looked, he was on 200 million and I was on 800 million. Which sounds like I'm completely thrashing him, but really, like, that's probably one extra gold at that point.
Yeah, this is it. You kind of feel, you look at the people above you on the score, the leaderboards, and you think, I can never do that. But then your score goes up exponentially.
Yeah. It has to be said, the randomness is, the variance in how hard or easy it can be is huge, because when you start a game, the 2 gold may well be next to each other. In fact, it's quite common for me next to each other.
I think it's almost always, or
maybe
very
on the
close.
first level, it always is. But even within that parameter, it can be incredibly hard to merge them or incredibly easy, because if the layout of the level is such that you are already further left than them, and everywhere you can push them doesn't have a barrier for them, but does have a barrier for you, you would hurt yourself by going left, and they would not be pushed up against anything, so they wouldn't merge. And I've had it where, like, just the very first merge takes me, like, 15 moves to find a way that I can shove them into the right corner to push them together. And that's true of every single time that they spawn. Yeah. Sometimes it's brutally difficult and sometimes it's super simple. And when there's enemies around, if it's brutally difficult and there's, like, 4 enemies to deal with, it's kind of a nightmare.
And it kind of gets around that a little bit because the level you get a fresh set of walls and newly placed gold, it might be 100 times in a single game. So
yeah,
that difficulty, while massive variance between generations, like over the course of a single playthrough, you've kind of, you've had a sort of the same general experience as ever.
Yeah, although if you do get a brutal one, you might not get past it.
That is true.
It is one thing it is generous about is once you killed all the enemies, it's a long time before any more enemies spawn. I think it's like usually sort of 17 moves you get before any other enemies spawn. Whereas something like it is a lot like 868 Hack and Imbroglio. And in those games, enemies, even from the start, enemies are spawning a lot. Like, dealing with the enemies is kind of not sustainable. You're always trying to do your objective and ignore them a little bit. Whereas in this, the thing I've learned is just forget about the gold for now. Don't push into a pit or anything, and don't let the enemies pick it up, but just kill all of the enemies. And once they're gone, you will have enough time to figure out how to merge these two bits of gold.
Yeah.
Oh, the best thing I got on my last run with the 800 million one. I think this must be a perk they reserve for late game, but it added a shield in a random direction to me. And I thought, like, oh, cool, how many points does that cost? No, it's a passive perk. It just adds a shield to you forever. And so I have a shield on that run. I have a shield on my left, which means I cannot be hurt from the left. I can move into the left infinitely. And when you can just I can stand up against the wall and just move left. Everyone else is moving left all the time. I'm staying where I am. I'm perfectly happy. I can just smash them all into the wall. It's amazing. And presumably, I've had the same perk twice before. Like, you can get the same passives and they stack. So the one that does 1 extra damage and you push them into the wall. If you get 2 of those, it does 2 extra damage when you push them into the wall. I assume this one can stack too, so you could just keep getting shields.
Which would explain how someone's got a number that's so long that I have no idea what you'd call it.
You had some fun with the tutorial, didn't you, Alex?
Oh, the tutorial. So basically, it has a really good sense of humour. Like, threes is cute looking and pleasant, but it's not got much of a sense of humour, I'd say. Like, it has the little things, they smile and that sort of stuff. But this game is, so if you so the game at the start, the tutorial text is telling you to merge stuff initially, but then asks you to eat stuff. And if you then merge again after it tells you to eat, some gold to demonstrate that system, it says no, please stop merging. I know merging's fun, but please go on to, and so you do it again. And it says, no, seriously, we can't go on to the next stage if we don't. And then the next one, if you do that again, I'm going to reset the tutorial. And it does. It's just so good.
I bet the percentage of people who see that message and the percentage of people who then do it again is probably like 95%. I bet, because at that point you're doing it to find out what it said.
and then it's and then when you finish the tutorial, it says, there are probably some more things to tutorialize, but I don't want to. Good luck.
And I think the OK button is always just cool. Cool. There are a lot of things in the game that aren't not well explained. I wish you could just click on anything and find out some information about it. But the counter for when enemies are going to spawn, or like when you're building towards when enemies are going to spawn,
sign.
Click on that, you get the fucking textbook on how that works. There's a breakdown of like the 7 top influences on when enemies will spawn, ranked in priority order of which things are most important, and it's a factor of your level, and it's a factor of how many turns on this screen, how many turns since the last enemy was killed, how many turns of this. And then the bottom of that just says, cool.
And then there's other bits that just, no, you're never going to tell you.
Yeah, right next to that, there's the other bar, which is separately from points. Every time you, it took me a long time to learn this, but this bar is filling when you kill things.
Yeah.
And that's like your mana that you spend on spells and stuff.
Which, because I didn't realise that the number next to the spell for a while was its cost. I thought it was the number of uses
exactly.
or something.
And I was looking at like, man, wait, you only get 1 use, but this kill thing, I get 7 uses from that. I definitely want that. And they go, no, it costs 7.
You can never afford to use it.
But that leads to some interesting stuff where like I was in a situation earlier where I had no good moves and I was really trapped to look at the end of my run. But one of my moves that I could do would kill an enemy that wasn't a threat to me at all. It was on the other side of the board. It was no worries, the least important enemy on the screen. But by killing him, I would get some points, and those points could be spent on one of my spells. I had a shitload of spells at that point. If I've got 4 points, I can solve any problem. And that was the way out of it in the end.
Good game. Twinfold.
Yes. Not to be confused with Twofold, which is also a primarily mobile game by Grapefruit, who did Hold Down, that we talked about on their Fantastic Arcade podcast. I also played Hades, which is the new Supergiant game, which is an Epic Store exclusive and early access. It's kind of big news, I think, that Supergiant releasing a new game from scratch, out of the blue. And it's a roguelike, which they haven't really done before. And that's interesting because they are a very narrative-focused studio, and that's true here as well, but they tried to kind of merge that with a roguelike. So you are, I can't remember his name, but he's the son of Hades. Hades is your dad. The game's named after your dad. Which must be really kind of galling. Like, man, I'm the star of this game and it's named after my dad still. The god of death. Yeah.
Julian.
Yeah, Julian, son of Hades.
He's very kind of Dante from
Hosey Brash.
that game.
I haven't seen the trailer even.
Dante's Inferno? Or Devil May Cry?
Devil May Cry, yeah.
It's weird because, I don't know, I think of them as... all of this stuff is so unusual and distinctive and its own thing. And this is Hades and Zeus and Athena and I guess just Greek gods. And so they all kind of already have, a pre-existing association. And I feel like their writing stuff is quite subtle sometimes. And also it's because it's in roguelike form. The way, my perception of how they're trying to solve this problem, because roguelike is short runs, you die, you start again. And narrative is a long journey from start to finish that you go through once and develop through the course of that. And the way they're trying to merge it is the story kind of happens back at base, and every time you die, you go back to base, and it is made very explicit that your character remembers the last life. Like you come out of a pool of blood, you've basically respawned rather than actually, starting the game again. And people have new things to say to you. And that structure doesn't really work for me because when I've just died in a roguelike, especially an action roguelike, which is a combat-focused action, twitch, challenge-based fighting game, every time I die, I am furious. I'm fucking so angry. And if I'm going to play it again at all, if I'm ever going to play it again instead of rage uninstalling it, it is because I'm hopelessly addicted to it, because I want to unlock the next thing and it's got persistent unlocks and stuff. And that does not make me any more conducive to hearing a fucking word anyone has to say to me. Shut up, everybody. Get out of my way. I'm going back to the fucking gate I got to go through to spawn again.
Is it what sort of thing was it say? Like sort of like, oh, you got to try harder, Julian? Or is it that kind of thing?
Again, your character is not called Julian. No, they don't rub it in. Your character is monologuing all the time. And I didn't like him at first, but he's kind of growing on me now because he is reminding me a lot of Transistor. Gameplay-wise, it's a lot like Bastion. It's an action game where you have some range. You pick a weapon, and it's either a ranged weapon or a melee weapon, and often it will have like the secondary fire will be the opposite of that. So like the shield is my hero weapon, and I can throw the shield as secondary fire, and it bounces off people and stuff like that. But then your character just kind of makes very, I think of them as like passive voice comments. Like you're always just commenting on things, but without making a big deal of it. Like you'll die to, an enemy that kills me a lot is the numbskulls because,
the Beano characters who live in someone's head.
Yes, they kill Julian, son of Hades. Supergiant are really good at naming things, and do you remember the Bastion characters all had very colloquial names? Like, was one of them called like the Gas Dude or something? Like, Gas Fella? I feel like Gas Fella was the name of an enemy in Bastion. Like they were that kind of thing. And this, I was getting killed by numbskulls all the time because the game has a otherwise very reliable interrupt system where when you hit an enemy, it interrupts their attack just pretty reliably across the board, and that makes it one-on-one. You'll defeat anything very easily because every weapon can attack faster than they can attack, and your attacks interrupt theirs, so you just win. Obviously, the way it gets hard is when there's lots of enemies, and when there's numbskulls, and the name of the numbskull is telling you it doesn't get interrupted because it's numb to your attack. Like you hit it, it doesn't care about you hitting it; it will still attack you. And so when I'm I had learned to just kind of spam the button and just smash everything. Just make sure everything is in my attack range at all times, and then I don't have to worry about them fighting back, and the numbskulls would hit me. And you die, and then your character just kind of comments like, numbskulls got me again, or something like that.
Okay.
And
so it's quite useful.
That's the only way I know they're called numbskulls, is that he keeps referencing them when they kill me. And the more you get killed by something, the more he talks about it. And yeah, they do a pretty good job of making that stuff not like, God, I fucking hate what is the game where Batman Arkham Asylum and related games where every time you die, like the Joker has a new taunt for you and like leans over down to you and says, "Aha!" Look, I can't wipe this off the top of my head.
That was pretty good. Batman!
Fuck you!
You fell over again.
Like, again, my state of mind when I've just died in a Twitch-based game is not good. It's not a good time to taunt me. And there's a type of player who, it's not that they love that stuff, it's that they rise to it. It's like, you taunt me, I'm going to fucking get you this time. I'm going to beat you up, Joker. That's how people think and taunt me.
I really want to see a video of you playing these games now. See your rage come out.
That is not my mindset. Very inclined to Alt F4 at that point. So this game does a good job of avoiding that. When you die, it's a very casual comment. This guy is kind of like, the first few times it says stuff like, I can't really get used to this, or comments on it like being a painful process. And now at this point, it's a very low-key, just casual things like, numbskull's got me again. So that stuff does work, but...
Does it diffuse you slightly?
No. But it doesn't antagonize me, which is good. And yeah, I just haven't bothered with any... I don't want to stop and talk to these NPCs because I'm itching... If I'm still feeling positive about the game, it's because I'm itching to get back to it and spend my currency on upgrades, my darkness points, which I spend in the mirror. I'm afraid you're a bit of an edgelord. Which gives you persistent upgrades like this one. For every point I put into it, I get 20% of my health back if I attack my attacker in that Bloodborne window. Right after your hit, if you attack back, you recoup some of that. Yeah. The main one I've been putting points into is just getting one fucking health point out of 50 every time I enter a room, like every time I complete a room and kill a bunch of enemies and move on. That's the closest thing I can get to healing, because my persistent problem with it was you get whittled down so fucking fast. If you slip up, you're going to take so much damage, and you just cannot recoup it any time in the early game. If you're good enough and you get far enough, then there are healing options, but my first sort of 10 to 20 runs, I just never got the opportunity to heal at all. So every single mistake I made, and I was making a lot of them because I was new to the game, was permanent and damning. And I got to the point where I was just like, there's this little like intro corridor. It's randomly generated after that point, but this corridor is the same every time. The enemies that spawn are a bit different, but there's only just like 2 or 3 basic enemies. And just before it, you get a perk that you get to choose. It's random. The perks you get are from different gods, and each god has like 3 things they offer. And what they offer is dependent on the weapon you've brought as well. So there's a lot of variance there. And I really like that they give you one right up front. So immediately your run is a little bit different to the last one. You get that, and then the enemies in that room are just to test that on, really. It's just like, get used to the controls, just you kill these 3 guys. Several times I have lost, like, you start with 50 health points. Several times I've lost more than 20 health points to those guys because I just made one fucking mistake. I just didn't know how this new thing I got worked. And your run is fucked. There's no point carrying on. There technically is a point in carrying on because you can't lose anything from a run, and every point of darkness you get is persistent, so there isn't really a reason to start again. But it feels so bad to lose half your health in the fucking intro corridor because you made one tiny mistake. And yeah, early on it just feels so punishing with that stuff. There's so few ways to get health back. Every mistake is extremely harshly punished, and it just feels kind of depressing. I've found myself restarting a lot in this game. Something goes wrong, I just think, fuck this run, it's over, I gotta just start again. Later on, as you get better at it and as you unlock more stuff, you get further, and then you get to shops, and in shops you can buy food that heals you. There are certain rooms, each room has a different reward, and sometimes you have the option of which room to go to, and one of the rewards is a max health boost that also boosts your current health by the same amount, so it doesn't really fill you, but if it gives you 25 extra max health, it also gives you 25 extra current health. And and a few little things like that. And obviously I've leveled up this healing per room. And so now it's almost got to the point where I can, I can have a decent run and like mistakes don't feel permanent in the same way. But it's kind of a bad balance because you don't want, when someone's first learning the game, to be super harsh on them, but then more forgiving on experienced players. You kind of want it to be the other way around. And I've uninstalled it now because it was making me very angry, but I was addicted to it, which is just a bad combination. I get angry with it and I stop playing because I'm angry with it, and then like 2 hours later I'm like, but I would like to try this weapon, or I'd like to like get back to, maybe next time I'll get a really good perk. Like there are some perks that are just, one time like in the second room I got a perk that was like 300% extra damage in your basic attack, which is just the thing you're doing all the time. And this is with the shield, which hits multiple targets in an arc, does quite a lot of damage per hit, more than the sword for some reason, and has deflect as a permanent property, which means just anyone who's attacking or any projectile that's hitting you at the time that you attack, it deflects it. And I got 300% extra damage on that. It's like, so I just slaughter everything in almost no time. Everything they can do to me, including numbskulls, will bounce off me while I'm attacking. And it hits everybody. And if anyone is ever out of range, I can throw it and it seeks to people and bounces around. And then, so that perk was insane. But, in general, I'd like the shield a lot. And then they took away deflect from it. The shield no longer deflects. And that's when I decided I'm going to stop playing this, because it isn't like fair play. It's early access. This is the kind of change you expect, but I realized like I just learnt how to play with the shield with deflect. Now that that's gone, I'm back to square one. This is like the day after it came out. It's just fundamentally radically changed.
You've at its very best, and you can never go back.
And I realized like A, this is making me extremely frustrated and is not good for me. And B, it's changing so fucking much that I'm not. The thing that was addicting was getting these perks and kind of building and learning the game, and that kind of inbuilt knowledge and muscle memory that you get in Splunky and Dead Cells and stuff, where you just get better at the skill-based thing of it. And I realized like the foundations under that are changing so much that I can't learn that either.
Because you get that little bit in Dead Cells that you kind of you go through a run with a lovely combination of weapons and you think this is what the game's about, and then you don't have that same combination in the next run, and you've got to learn the muscle memory. Over time, I guess you just learn each of the permutations, and it becomes normal. But
yeah, actually, one thing I like in this game is that there's just you choose your weapon back at base, and when you leave, it never changes after that. You never find new weapons. You never change weapons. It's just that weapon, and you find perks for it all the time, and those are themed to the various gods, and you get to choose which kind of ability of the weapon it upgrades in what way. And I like that more than Dead Cell system, I think, because you're not so dependent on drops. You're not just hoping like, ooh, I really like a shield, I hope I get a shield. Also in Dead Cells, you're never hoping to get a shield because the shields in Dead Cells suck, in my opinion. And this is a game that does a shield really well. It's while you hold it, you are protected from that direction, and when you release it, you do a bull rush. So you charge towards people with that, and in this, that wouldn't work in Dead Cells because you can only really be attacked from two directions in Dead Cells, and so being able to completely block one of those would be pretty game breaking. But in an isometric game where you're being attacked from all directions, blocking in one direction is not completely game breakingly good. So that works, and I like. If you're getting bored or frustrated, you just pick a different weapon at the start. You don't have to hope you come up with, you get given a different weapon. The weapons are designed to be equal in effectiveness. It's not like there's better ones that you get. It's just they're different play styles, and you have to unlock them. So you like one of the things you can get from a room is a key, and I think the shield costs maybe 4 keys to unlock it. It looks like there's slots for like 5 or 6 weapons, and I think there's only 3 at the moment. Maybe there's 4. There's sword, shield, spear, bow, so there's 4, and I think there's 2 more places for weapons that it seems like they haven't been added yet. There's loads of things about it that I like in theory, design wise, and I have to say it's a lot cleaner and better presented than their previous combat systems. Like Transistor, I love it to death. It's my favorite of their games, but it is really unclear what's going on in combat. There's so many times when like I don't even know if I took damage just then. Like the screen flashed and stuff was going on, but actually it looks like I didn't lose health that time. But other times I'm like half health. I didn't even notice that happening. It's really clear when you're taking damage. Everything, the art style is much better defined and much more readable. There's less kind of clutter and ambiguity about what's going on. So that's all good. But in practice, I mean, Twitch games are not my thing anyway. And yeah, they're not good for me. I get very, very angry.
I need a video feed.
It's not pretty. It sounds funny when I'm talking about the abstract, but if you saw it, you just think, you pathetic little man. Should we do some questions?
Yes.
Okay. This one from Andrew says, Dear Fruit and Fruitivores, in the recent episode you drunkenly rambled about how lettuces don't want to get eaten, but fruit do. A more useful direction is what organisms' fitness, defined around reproductive success, is improved by being eaten. Then lettuces are keen on it as they end up farmed. Like how cows have selectively bred some humans to be lactose intolerant so they can get laid. Not 100% sure about that. But in other words, as soon as you add intentionality, it gets weird and scary. He has a question, which is, what games have made you anthropomorphize something that led to everything being uncomfortable? I don't know about any games, but this question certainly made me uncomfortable.
Well, there's that argument that kind of sort of pets are some of the most successful animals. Like, we can look at them and say, "Oh, poor subjugated animal," but actually, like, they are, you know, their reproductive kind of abilities are all just totally supported by another species.
Yeah.
I wonder if you asked a cow if you thought it picked the right direction, if it would agree.
It's hard to say. The pet lettuce really has triumphed overall.
I learned that citrus fruits, none of them are sort of natural at all.
Really?
And
cultivars.
Cultivars, yeah. And there is an original one, which I've forgotten the name of.
Is it the citron?
I think it is. The citron.
It sounds so much like you guys are making this up.
It came...
There's just the single master fruit called the citron, and
It
everything
came
else
from
is
the
fake.
sky.
There's three. There's the original three. I have no idea what that is.
The original three, the citron.
I think it's citron, possibly the mandarin, and the pomelo. I think.
Pomelo's the one that I was aware of.
All right.
So it might be just the third one. What did you say that?
The mandarin, one of the smaller oranges.
And all other oranges come from that orange.
Yes, selectively bred to get bigger.
Huh.
Mandarin ones are very nice.
They
So
are.
I can see how that might have...
The precursor.
The precursor race of oranges. We can study the remnants of Mandarin civilization.
Yes.
The gold in Twinfold has like a face and stuff on it, but you eat it and you force it to merge with itself. That's pretty unsettling. I mean, I hadn't thought about it until this question, so again, it's really the question's fault. But, let me find the next question. Some guy from the internet writes, I could not tell you whether this is a person on the internet or a person in the internet, or because that is the username of one of our community members, but then some people do just describe themselves that way. Dear Fated Soapbar, I recently discovered the Read Harder reading challenge. It consists of a list of criteria for books, and one is supposed to read a different book for every item on the list. The end goal is to try more different things and to pick up new interests, and I like how reading challenges give structure to the exploration. I think this could be a good way to explore different kinds of video games. It would not be difficult to create a list based off franchises, developers, and genres, but I'm more interested in gameplay and playstyle related challenges. Examples of what I'm thinking include playing a Telltale game and trying to get the worst possible outcomes, playing an immersive sim non-lethally and non-stealthily, playing an immersive sim with equipment OSP rules, which explains is you should empty your inventory before moving to the next level. Playing, I don't know what OSP stands for, so tell us if you know. Playing a Bethesda RPG without talking to any friendly NPCs, playing a joke Doom WOD, playing through a game in an unfamiliar language, playing an open world game without upgrading your character. Do such lists exist already? What would you put on your list? How would you name it? Thank you for reading. Kind regards, some guy on the internet. Yeah, this is an interesting idea. The thing it puts me in mind of is when I was disc editor on PC Gamer, I had to play every demo that I was putting on the disc, so I was just forced to play a bunch of stuff that was totally outside of my tastes, and I did learn, that's how I got into Rise of Nations, which previously I would have said I'm not interested in any historical strategy.
Don't like
game.
Nations.
Yeah, I don't. Nations
like
or Rising.
Going up.
They should stay where they are. On the ground is where a nation belongs.
It's good. Gets you out of your comfort zone, introduces you to new things. I think the equivalency is slightly flawed from the book reading list, where you would go and read books, and I assume the point would be that they would all be good, but playing games contrary to how they're supposed to be played, you could often end up in areas which are underdeveloped.
Yeah.
And
although I think the skill is developing a way of playing it which the game does support, but you tend not to explore. Like,
yeah.
So I tend to play. I find it really hard to be an arsehole in games because I'm just such a nice guy, you know. And so I'm playing Red Dead Redemption at the moment and having a real trouble sort of doing most of the things the game is designed to do, which is to be a dick to people and shoot people and rob banks and stuff. Because I roll up in a town and I'm kind of like, well, it seems nice here.
Yeah.
I don't want to mess this up.
I like when
don't
you walk
want to
into
get
a bar
chased.
and then your character just randomly insults a sex worker just with no interactivity at all. You can't choose not to. Just and it starts a fight like it's a huge deal.
Okay, I'm reloading. I don't want it to happen. I'm not going in there ever again because I don't want to be a dick.
I did hear the missions where you are extracting debts from people. I had heard that you had to beat the people. And I don't know if this is true for all of them because I've only done one of them, but the one I had, it was strong, like you had the option to threaten or beat, and then I threatened and it didn't work, and it said beat him. Like it was an actual tip that came up on screen, and I just refused to. I just kept threatening him, and it actually eventually worked. I was able to not attack him in any way, just keep threatening him.
Because I assumed they'd just run off or something, and you'd fail it, or just sort of you'd have to kill them because they, it's the only way to finish the level.
Yeah, it's definitely it's got a nasty streak of they assume some things about your character that are extremely objectionable. And
well, honestly, you are meant to be an outlaw. Like you are playing, you're a bastard in the West. Like
I don't.
That is, I agree. I don't want to do that either. But I do like the idea of drawing up a little list for yourself, which absolves you. So like, no, I'm not allowed to play another way because of this arbitrary thing that I've told myself.
Yeah,
that
I wonder if people who have trouble choosing the evil option in an RPG would feel okay about it if they're doing it as a kind of challenge that someone else has set for them.
Yeah, there's a few things, a few games that have unexplored aspects to them if you just follow how they're meant to be played. I played, there was a racing game called Fuel, which was lots of races, kind of off-road, trucks and buggies and things, set in a huge open world. And it was far more fun to just leave the racecourse and trundle across this huge landscape. It had an amazing kind of feel about it. There were these strange monolithic black trucks going across empty roads and kind of trundled around and found a lot of different varying biomes and things. And it just felt like you were on a journey. It was a genuinely interesting way to play a game how it was not intended to. So,
I'd love to see that game updated, actually, sort of smoothed out, because it was always a bit sort of janky, and it was obviously for the last generation as well. So I would love to see that rise again. Yeah. I remember Jim Rossignol wrote about on RPS a sort of an account of travelling right the way across the map, because it literally took several hours to drive it, didn't it?
Yeah, and it was that article that made me do it. So maybe Jim could compile this list, so none of us have to do it.
I think doing like taxi jobs in a GTA game and trying not to break any traffic laws, trying not to bump into anything, just trying to drive perfectly and just be a law-abiding citizen for a bit and just do a job and get paid for it. That is a sort of strange pleasure in that game. Like if you do that, it's surprisingly rewarding. It sounds like it's going to be super dull, but actually is. There's a lot of fun to be had doing that. This is an extremely obvious me response, but doing Liberty Island in Deus Ex without directly attacking anyone. Just anything else goes, but just don't directly shoot or hit anybody.
But for you, this really the purest way of approaching this, though, for you, Tom, would be all guns, all the noise. The problem is that a lot of those games aren't very pleasant to play as shooters.
Yeah, I've been thinking of this as sort of like a reading list that sort of pushes like an unknown person to explore many different avenues of games that they might not otherwise give a chance to. So the things I would recommend are things that I do know that I have done that don't challenge me but might challenge someone else. And the things that I haven't done, I don't know if they're worthwhile because I haven't done them. I mean, I've certainly killed everyone in a Hitman level. I don't know if I've done it in a Deus Ex level, but I think I have done like Deus Ex runs where I'll just like assassinate everybody. Like I have to do it stealthily, but I will kill every single person on the level. Also, because I want to hear what my brother says.
Just to get him really upset.
Oh yeah. Mike from Dundee writes, "Dear Fake Man's Tow Bar, the other night was one of those nights where it felt like I saw every hour on the clock. Frustrations quickly set in and it felt like I would never see sleep's sweet respite. And I'm going to skip the rest of his account of his insomnia and skip to the question, which is, which game do you feel uses sleep most effectively as a mechanic? And or what sleep-based mechanic would you like to see implemented in a future title? We all know sleep isn't as simple as choosing how long you want to sleep and hitting OK. Love the pod, keep up the stellar work." I was trying to think of like sleep in games that wasn't just that, and remembered that in Wolfenstein, I think Wolfenstein 2, I think the most recent one, when you go back to base, there's an option to sleep, and you have a series of dreams that advance the plot, or I don't know, they're story related anyway. But when the tooltip prompt for using your bed will just be nightmare. Would you like a nightmare now? Not really, actually.
I'm pretty sure that also that that's the way you play the original remakes of the old Wolfenstein 3D levels. I'm pretty sure that's the way to do it.
By dreaming.
One way of doing it, yeah. Dreaming in 8-bit or whatever that is. No, 16 or 32. I don't know even know what it was. I was thinking about the so Dusk, the game I was talking about earlier. I found randomly enough like a sleeping bag on the floor, and I could sleep on it, and it regained me 10 morale, which meant that it was shield, which is one way of doing it.
What is the sleep to gold conversion rate? How many gold ingots is 8 hours of sleep in morale terms?
Well, if you're sleepless, it's priceless.
Are there any games where like you can use dreams like to achieve something in the real world, like, you know,
yeah,
almost like the cyberspace dimension in System Shock?
That feels like it's a thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, it feels like it would have been done. If it hasn't already, it's surely someone's going to do it, where you fall asleep and that lets you kind of access and roam the world in some different way and make some change.
Is there an element of
carries
sleep
across
in
the world.
Psychonauts?
Don't know. You're certainly going inside people's unconscious
Yeah.
and trying to change those.
But you know, the premise is right, that kind of the Elder Scrolls style, I'm going to go to sleep now for 8 hours and kind of then you wake up. I always thought that Minecraft had quite a nice sort of sleep thing where if you couldn't sleep when there were mobs nearby, and you'd have to figure out ways that sort of you could put a bed safely that you wouldn't get woken up by the mobs that came by.
There was, Elder Scrolls games, I feel like some of them don't let you sleep if there's someone nearby.
Yeah.
And I feel like Morrowind did let you sleep, but you'd get woken up. So you could sleep maybe just regardless, but if there was something nearby, it would actually, like 2 hours into your 8 hour sleep, you'd wake up and you'd just be told a noise would woke you up, and you wouldn't necessarily know what it was, and you have to go and find out. I guess they must have had some system for stopping you just going immediately back to bed.
Yeah, there's sort of diminishing returns on sleeping, isn't there, on a lot of games to stop that? Because usually it's like used as a reset thing, like in D&D, like it's the get your spell back, recoup health, and all
And
that
in
sort of
Morrowind,
thing.
it was the only way you got mana back, other than potions. Like there was no natural mana regen.
Yeah. But like it's a creative thing. Like if sleep in real life is partly to do with kind of sorting out your head, you know, kind of sort of putting memories into order and generally feeling kind of like you can cope with the world. I'm not sure games do that particularly.
You know
well.
what? Sleep has helped me play some puzzle games before.
Yeah.
Just going to bed and waking up, it's like, oh, it's meant to work like this.
So what you're saying
you
is that,
dream
like,
the
you get
solution?
easier puzzles after you slept.
Yeah, dream logic filters through.
Because actually, now that I think about it, one of the uses that dreams do have for me in real life is that they sometimes warn me about forthcoming, deadlines or things I'm worried about. Like, you have the nightmare that you didn't do the homework and you wake up thinking, shit, I've really got to do that fucking homework. Thank God that wasn't real. I still have time to do the homework. Let's fucking do the fucking homework right fucking now. So it'd be interesting if in games, like, when you went to sleep, you had an option of different dreams you could have, and whichever one you had, it would give you like a boost to that if that thing really happens. Like, if you're you get to choose whether to dream about like being attacked by an orc or or having to negotiate with the shopkeeper or something else. And whichever one of those things you pick, if it does happen in your next day, you'll have an advantage at it.
So it's like a perk system.
Yeah.
Like a sort of directed perk system. Yeah.
Or also, it could just be used like every little tool tip that would have come up in your day-to-day life about telling you how to do various things. Like when you sleep, you just get a fucking dump of those, just like 25. Here are all those things that you didn't have time to think about when you were awake.
Or maybe it's giving you, like, it just processes, like it does the, back to Red Dead Redemption, the way that it tells you how to play the game in tiny blobs of text in the top left corner of the screen, which I continually don't pay any attention
And you
to.
notice it, but in the last 2 seconds of it
Yeah, it's like,
wait, what did they say? What about the legendary thing?
Guess I'll never know about that. But maybe sort of it actually puts those into somewhere you can actually access them after you've slept. Like it's continually it's telling you what to do, but in a way that you'll never notice. So you have to go to sleep to actually figure out how to play.
Well, I didn't see that, but if I just fall asleep right now, I can read the backlog. And Kane has reminded us to mention that the Crate and Crowbar Discord community are doing a Game of the Year thing, and there's a URL, but it's a bit too long to read out. So he says that there will be a GOTY discussion channel on the Discord server. So our Discord you can find it on crateandcrowbar.com, and there'll be a channel there to discuss your Game of the Year. And so there'll be a community Game of the Year, and we'll do our own Game of the Year podcast thing at some point. I believe that's in the plan.
I guess would be the plan.
Yeah. It's this year. I was saying to Chris, like, oh, this is going to be an interesting one because, off the top of my head, I can't really think what the best game this year is. Yeah. But I forgot this year was infinite. All games were released this year. There was no time before this year. This year has lasted forever. And so fucking Into the Breach was this year. That blows my mind, but it apparently was. And so obviously it's that. Not to spoil it, but
I was so I wrote a sort of end of year list for Robbie Shotgun and really struggled to come up with a list. Like I came up with a lot of games that I enjoyed, but not to come up with 5. There just weren't.
Subnautica was this year?
Subnautica.
No way, was it? Yeah. I suppose it was early access before that, which I haven't played it. I haven't bloody played that game.
The real reason Into the Breach seems impossible that came out this year is because I played it in early 2017, I think.
Yeah. So Moonshot was only in the summer. That feels like it was a long time ago. Prey, Moonshot.
Moon Crash.
Moon Crash. Why do I keep calling it Moonshot? Yeah.
Is it? You want to put the word shock into Prey because it's clearly a shock game, but they weren't allowed to call it that.
Yeah.
Hey, that's multiplayer now.
Yeah, we should play that.
News.
We should play that.
Yep. That's what we have to say about that. We haven't played
Probably not a podcastable kind of discussion, but to arrange a time to play it. Anyway.
That is all the questions we have time for. You can send us questions at questions@crateandcrowbar.com. And on Twitter, Crate and Crowbar is @Crate and Crowbar. You can support us on Patreon, which many people do, and we're grateful for. We're at patreon.com/Crate and Crowbar. We have a YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Crate and Crowbar. Our Discord is a place where many of us hang out, and that is linked to on our site, which is crateandcrowbar.com. You can follow us individually. I am at Pentadact on Twitter, PENTADACT. What are you, Alex?
I am Rotational on Twitter. That's ROTATIONAL.
Yay. Yeah. And John?
I'm JOHN_ARR.
Jonar. Thanks for listening.
everybody.